At 31, Rachel paused her 401k contributions for 8 months. Her mother had been diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's, and she needed to travel more, be available more, cover expenses her mother couldn't predict. 8 months felt like a small sacrifice, a reasonable response to a hard season. At 34, Rachel paused again. She and her partner decided to buy a house. They needed to preserve cash for the down payment. 11 months out of the market, at 37, Rachel went through a divorce. Her financial life reorganized completely. Lawyers, splitting accounts, rebuilding an emergency fund from scratch. She didn't pause investing deliberately. She just had nothing left to invest for about 14 months. At 41, her daughter started having trouble in school, private tutoring, evaluations, extra support. Another 7 months where the investing contributions were the lever she pulled to make the numbers work. Rachel is 44 now. She earns $88,000 a year. She has been working for 22 years. She has $94,000 in her retirement account. Her colleague James has had a largely uneventful financial life by comparison. No caregiving crises, no divorce, no children with expensive needs. He has $341,000 in his retirement account at 44. Same employer for most of his career. Roughly similar income trajectory. The gap between Rachel and James is not income. It is not intelligence or discipline or how much they care about their financial futures. The gap is pauses. Rachel has spent a combined 40 months out of the market across 4 legitimate, reasonable, entirely understandable life events. James has spent 0 months out of the market because his life handed him fewer situations in which pausing felt like the obvious response. 40 months. That is the entire difference between $94,000 and $341,000. My name is Nicole, and I have spent the last 12 years studying the specific financial patterns that show up almost exclusively in women's wealth trajectories and almost never in men's. The pause pattern is the one that breaks my heart the most because it is the least visible and the most damaging. Because every single pause Rachel made was rational. Everyone was a compassionate response to a real situation. Everyone was the kind of decision a responsible, caring adult makes when something urgent competes with something important. And collectively, those reasonable decisions cost her $247,000 in compounded retirement wealth. This is not a story about women being bad with money. This is a story about women being good at something that is quietly catastrophic for their wealth. Being the person who makes the sacrifice, being the one who adjusts, being the one who absorbs the financial shock of whatever the family or the relationship or the situation needs. And doing it in the one specific place where stopping and restarting has compounding consequences that never fully heal. She never misses a deadline. If you are someone who has paused, investing at least once for reasons that felt completely justified, or if you are someone who has never quite started because the timing has never quite been right, this video is going to show you exactly what those pauses cost in real dollars. Subscribe and like this video. It genuinely matters for reaching more women who need to hear this. By the end of this, you will understand why women pause investing at dramatically higher rates than men, what the documented triggers are, and why the math on pausing is almost always worse than the math on any alternative. I am going to show you the actual numbers on what one pause costs versus what most women think it costs. I will explain the specific psychological trap that makes pausing feel like the right call every single time, even when it is the most expensive decision available. And I will give you 3 protocols, seasons, that protect your contributions through hard seasons without requiring you to pretend those hard seasons aren't happening. I built a free calculator that shows you the real cost of pausing contributions at your age and your current balance. Not a generic chart, your specific numbers. What one pause costs you, what 2 pauses cost you, what you would have at retirement if you had never paused at all. The gap tends to be shocking in a way that changes behavior. Link in the description. Think of your retirement contributions like a garden you planted in your 20s. Every month you contribute is a seed planted. Every month those seeds have been in the ground. They have been growing, branching, producing roots that produce more roots. The garden does not know or care what is happening in your life above the soil. It just grows. Or it doesn't. Based entirely on whether the seeds are in the ground. When you pause contributions, you are not just skipping a month of planting. You are removing the seeds that were going to be planted this month. But you are also losing every branch, every root, every fruit that those seeds would have produced for the next 20 or 30 years. The growth lost is not proportional to the contribution missed. It is exponentially larger. Because compounding does not work linearly, it accelerates. And every seed you don't plant is not just one missing seed at retirement. It is the entire tree that seed would have become. Rachel's 40 months of pauses did not cost her 40 months of contributions. At $500 a month, that is $20,000 in direct contributions. But the compound future value of those $20, zero in contributions, planted at the ages they would have been planted and grown at historical market rates through her expected retirement at 65, is approximately $247,000. The pause costs 12 times what it looks like it costs from the outside. This is why the math on pausing almost never makes rational sense, even when the pause feels completely necessary. The thing you are sacrificing to fund, the lawyer, the down payment, the tutoring, the caregiving expense, is priced in today's dollars. The thing you are actually sacrificing is priced in 30 years of compound growth. The comparison is never equal, and it is never obvious in the moment because nobody shows you that math when the crisis arrives. Let me show you the 5 triggers. The 5 situations that research consistently identifies as the points at which women disproportionately pause or stop investing compared to men facing the same circumstances. First trigger: caregiving. Women provide the majority of informal caregiving in the United States. For aging parents, for children with special needs, for partners with illness or disability. The financial impact of caregiving on women's wealth is documented across decades of research, and it is severe. Women who take on caregiving responsibilities are significantly more likely to reduce working hours, leave the workforce temporarily, or redirect financial resources away from their own accounts toward caregiving costs. Men in the same households facing the same caregiving situations are significantly less likely to change their financial behavior. This is not because men are heartless. It is because the cultural default still positions women as the financial absorbers of family disruption. When something expensive and urgent happens in the family system, women are more likely to be the ones who adjust their financial plans to accommodate it. And retirement contributions. She never misses a deadline because they are invisible and future-focused and feel like a personal luxury compared to a parent's medical bill are the most commonly adjusted item. She never misses a deadline. The average woman in the United States will spend significantly more years in a caregiving role than the average man. Every year in a caregiving role with reduced or paused contributions is a year of compounding that does not happen. Second trigger. Relationship transitions. Divorce is one of the most financially destabilizing events in a woman's life. The documented wealth gap between divorced women and divorced men 5 years post-divorce is significant. Women lose more wealth through divorce on average. Women's household income drops more post-divorce. Women are more likely to pause or deplete retirement savings during or after a divorce to cover transition costs, legal fees, and the financial reorganization of building a single-income life. Marriage also changes women's investing behavior in ways it does not change men's. Research shows women are more likely to defer financial decision-making to a partner after marriage. She never misses a deadline to reduce their personal financial activity in favor of shared household financial management that the partner leads, and to experience gaps in their own investment continuity during periods of financial integration with a partner. The pause that starts as "we need to figure out our finances together" sometimes extends for years. Third trigger. Home purchase. Buying a home is widely sold as the cornerstone of financial security. It is also one of the most reliable catalysts for pausing retirement contributions. The months of cash preservation before closing, the emergency fund rebuild after the down payment, the wave of unexpected costs in the first year of ownership that nobody fully prices in. The home absorbs the financial margin that was going to investments, and for women who tend to have lower investment balances going into the home purchase and are more likely to be contributing to a joint household on a single or lower income, the recovery period after a home purchase is longer. The painful math here is that the home is frequently framed as the investment. You are building equity. You are not wasting money on rent. The asset is yours, but a home, unless it is a rental property generating income, does not compound the way invested assets compound. It appreciates, slowly, unevenly, with enormous maintenance costs along the way. The $60, zero down payment redirected from index funds is not replaced by home equity at the same rate it would have been replaced by market returns. The trade is not equal, and it is not even close at historical return rates. But it feels responsible in a way that continuing to rent and continuing to invest does not, which is its own psychological trap worth its own video. Fourth trigger. Children. The motherhood penalty is documented, named, and real. Women's earnings and career trajectories change materially with the birth of a child in ways men's do not. But beyond the income impact, children create what I think of as the contribution squeeze. The new expenses arrive immediately. The childcare costs arrive immediately. The reduction in working hours or the career pause arrives immediately. The adjustment to manage all of this most commonly comes from the line item that feels least urgent, which is retirement contributions that won't matter for 30 years. The child's needs are present and visible. The retirement gap is future and invisible. And so women pull from the future to fund the present in a way that is permanent, even when the expense that triggered it is temporary. Fifth trigger. Financial anxiety itself. This one is the least visible and possibly the most common. Market volatility. A period of financial stress. A year where money felt tight, and the idea of sending 400% felt reckless. Somewhere dropped 20% felt reckless. Women pause investing at higher rates during market downturns than men. Not because women are more fearful in some essential way, because women receive different messaging about market volatility. The same 20% portfolio drop that a male investor is told to treat as a buying opportunity is described to women in financial media and financial advertising as a risk to be managed, a reason for caution. a sign that more conservative approaches are appropriate. The cruel irony of pausing during a market drop is that you are stopping contributions at exactly the moment when the per-share price is lowest. She never misses a deadline, which is the moment when each dollar you invest buys the most future growth. The pause during volatility is not protective. She never misses a deadline. It is the most expensive version of the pause because it removes you from the market at the bottom and keeps you out long enough to miss the recovery. Now let me introduce you to 3 women whose stories I want you to hold while we work through the protocols. First is Diana. 46. She has paused investing twice, once during a difficult pregnancy that required her to stop working for 4 months, once during her mother's final illness. Both pauses lasted under a year. Both felt necessary. Both were, in isolation, completely understandable. Combined, they cost her roughly $180,000 in projected retirement wealth. Diana knows she is behind. She does not know by how much. The number I showed her was the first time the real figure had been in front of her, and she sat with it quietly for about 30 seconds before she said, "I didn't know it was that bad." Most women don't, because nobody shows them the tree. They only see the seeds. Second is Priya, 38. She has never fully paused, but she contributed inconsistently for the first 6 years of her career. Some months she invested, some months she didn't, depending on what else was happening. No single dramatic pause, just a pattern of treating the contribution as optional, as the flexible item in the budget that got adjusted when anything else required adjustment. The inconsistency is less dramatic than Rachel's pauses, but the math is remarkably similar. Inconsistent contributions across 6 years cost Priya approximately $140,000 in projected retirement wealth compared to what consistent contributions would have built. Third is Elena. 52. She paused investing at 39 for 14 months during a divorce. She has not paused since. She has been consistent, disciplined, and increasingly aggressive with her contributions since 41. She has made up ground. She has not made up all of it. The 14-month pause from 13 years ago is still a $90 zeros gap, Ceres in her projected retirement balance because the compounding on those 14 months of contributions had 12 more years to run than her makeup contributions did. The earlier the pause, the more expensive it is. The math does not care that she has been disciplined since. The missing seeds don't grow back. Now let me tell you about the core psychology that makes every pause feel right in the moment. It is the visibility gap. The financial need that triggers the pause is always visible. It is concrete, it is urgent, it has a face or a number or a deadline. Your mother's medical bills are visible. The lawyer's retainer is visible. The childcare invoice is visible. The mortgage closing costs are visible. The cost of the pause is invisible. The $247,000 Rachel lost does not appear anywhere. Her 401k statement still shows her balance. It just doesn't show what her balance would have been. There is no invoice for compound growth lost. There is no notification that reads, "You paused for 8 months, and it will cost you $47,000 at retirement. The loss is silent." It happens in a future that feels abstract when the present crisis is loud. This is why rational, intelligent women make this choice repeatedly across a lifetime. They are not failing to do math. They are making a decision in an information environment where one side of the equation is fully visible and the other is completely hidden. Sit. If every pause came with an itemized future cost statement, the decision calculus would change, not because women don't care about their future selves, but because we consistently make better decisions when we can see what we are actually choosing between. Here is what I want you to understand about the mechanics of why pausing is almost always worse than any alternative. When you pause contributions to free up $500 a month, you are solving a $500 problem with a $5,000 to $15,000 solution. The options that feel worse in the moment, a small personal loan, a credit card balance temporarily carried, a conversation with family about sharing caregiving costs, negotiating a payment plan with a service provider, reducing a different budget category. Most of these options cost less in the long run than removing yourself from compounding growth for the same period. A 19% credit card balance on $3 Zizozin carried for 8 months costs approximately $380 in interest. 8 months of paused contributions at $500 per month, planted at 35 and grown to 65, costs approximately $52. 000 future wealth. 000 in future wealth, the credit card option that feels irresponsible is often dramatically less expensive than the pause that feels responsible. The responsible feeling is produced by the visibility of the interest charge and the invisibility of the compounding loss. The math is not supporting the feeling. This is not an argument for carrying consumer debt carelessly. It is an argument for pricing pauses honestly before choosing them. If you are going to pause, know the real cost before you decide. Not the amount you will temporarily not contribute. The compound future value of everything that amount would have become. Here are the 3 protocols that protect contributions through hard seasons. First protocol. Set a contribution floor and make it untouchable. Most women who pause are pausing full contributions. The entire $500 or $800 or $2,200 a month stops because the full amount is not available in the crisis period. But you do not have to pause completely to respond to a financial disruption. You need to define your contribution floor before the crisis arrives. The minimum you will maintain under any circumstances. For most people, that floor is between $50 and $150 a month, small enough to survive any financial disruption, large enough to stay in the market and stay in the compounding sequence. The difference in compounding outcome between $500 a month and $75 a month is significant. The difference between $75 a month and 0 is enormous. 0 breaks the sequence. 0 loses the time. $75 keeps you in the market. It keeps the compounding clock running. It keeps your future self in the equation while you manage the present crisis. Decide your floor now. Not during the next crisis when the pressure is high and the number available feels like it needs to be 0. Now. Write it down. Tell someone. Make it a rule rather than a monthly decision. Second protocol. Build a pause fund specifically to eliminate the need for pauses. This is different from an emergency fund. An emergency fund covers income loss and unexpected expenses. A pause fund covers the specific category of financial disruptions that historically cause women to stop investing. Caregiving costs. Divorce transition costs, home purchase gaps, the predictable categories of life disruption that disproportionately fall to women. The pause fund lives in a high-yield savings account separate from your emergency fund. Its only purpose is to be spent so you do not have to pause your contributions. If your mother has a medical bill that would otherwise trigger a pause, the pause fund covers it. She never misses a deadline. If the divorce requires a retainer you weren't expecting, the pause fund covers it. If the first year of homeownership produces a $4,000 appliance replacement, the pause fund covers it. The pause fund does not need to be large. 3 to 5 months of your monthly investment contribution is a reasonable target. $1,500 to $2,500 for most people. Enough to cover most single event disruptions that would otherwise knock you out of the market for months. You are essentially pre-funding your own pauses, so you never have to take them. Third protocol, automate a contribution. Increase every year regardless of circumstances. Here is the makeup math that most women never run, because the earliest years of compounding are the most valuable. Thus trimmed, trying to make up for past pauses by contributing more laters is always less efficient than not pausing in the first place. But the next best thing to not pausing is automating annual increases to your contribution rate so that the makeup happens gradually and without requiring active decision-making. Most employer retirement plans allow you to set an automatic annual escalation, 1% per year, 2% per year. Set it and forget it. Each year your contribution rate goes up by your chosen increment automatically. You do not have to remember. You do not have to decide whether you can afford it. You just one day that you are contributing meaningfully more than you were 5 years ago, and your balance reflects it. For women who have paused, this is the most reliable recovery mechanism available. Not dramatic, catch-up contributions that require sustained willpower. A quiet, automatic escalation that compounds in the background while you live your life. Here is what Rachel's story looks like if she implements all 3 of these protocols starting now. She is 44. She has $94,000. She has 21 years to standard retirement age. She sets a contribution floor of $150 a month, even during future disruptions. She builds a pause fund over the next 18 months of $2,000. She sets an automatic annual escalation of 2% on her 401k contribution starting next enrollment period. She also increases her base contribution from her current rate to $800 a month now that her daughter's tutoring costs have stabilized at $65. Rachel's projected balance under this plan is approximately $640,000. It is not the $341,000 James had at 44. It is not what she would have had without the pauses, but it is not $94,000 either. It is a retirement. It is security. It is possible from exactly where she is right now. The pauses are not erasable. But they are not the final word. Here is what I want you to take from this. The pause is never as cheap as it looks. The monthly contribution feels small. The crisis feels large. The natural response is to stop the small thing to manage the large thing. But the small thing is not small at retirement. It is 12 times larger by the time you need it. And the large thing, almost always, has cheaper solutions than removing yourself from 20 years of compound growth. The women who build the most wealth are not the women whose lives handed them the fewest disruptions. They are the women who built systems around their contributions that survived the disruptions without stopping. A floor. A pause fund. An automation that grows without asking for permission. You cannot control what life brings into the seasons ahead. You can control whether your contributions survive those seasons, and that difference, the difference between a contribution record with 40 months of gaps and one with 0 months of gaps, is the difference between $94,000 and $341,000. Start there. Here are your 3 takeaways. 1. Price every pause before you take it. The real cost is not the monthly contribution you won't make. It is the compound future value of everything that contribution would have become. Run the number. Then decide. 2. Set your contribution floor now, not during the next crisis. The minimum you will maintain under any circumstances. It can be $50, it can be $100, it just cannot be 0 because 0 breaks the sequence that everything else depends on. 3. Build a pause fund, separate from your emergency fund. Size to cover the specific categories of disruption that have historically caused you to stop investing. Pre-fund the pauses you can predict so you never have to take them. I wish someone had shown me this math at 28. I paused twice before I understood the real price of it. The second time, I finally sat down and calculated what those pauses actually cost me over a lifetime, and the number was enough to make sure I have never paused since. Not because nothing hard has happened, because now I know what it costs. And knowing changes everything. If you want to see the full breakdown of how I structure contributions to survive career transitions, market volatility, and the specific financial disruptions that tend to hit women in their 30s and 40s, there is a video on this channel that walks through the exact framework. Real numbers, no affiliate links, just the math. Thanks for watching.